The farmer's market is a place where the player has to go on a rather interesting fetch quest. Whereas other levels such as the smuggler's hideout had the player simply hunting spider spices, the farmer's market is where the player must hunt down Houdini spicers who are holding chlorophyll samples, search the Worley winery for distilled water, and then race the smoke systems to find the B enzymes in the Silverwing apiary, all in an effort to create the Lazarus Vector and revive the plants in Arcadia. Even though this seems as little more than a side quest branching off of Arcadia, the level serves another purpose of further enhancing the player's knowledge of what was going on in Rapture before the fall, as well as giving further insight into the moral decisions that were made when creating the Little Sisters. Just before entering the level, the player sees a sepia-toned flashback to the farmhouse in which Jack supposedly lived and grew up, fitting the theme of the upcoming level. Knowing in hindsight that none of these memories are real, there is an open possibility that Fontaine may have been controlling Jack's mind to think of a farm when entering the farmer's market, in a twisted attempt to make the two appear to be related. In turn, the use of this flashback also creates a standard to which the farmer's market can be compared, further enhancing the idea that it cannot live up to its title. If Jack believed that he grew up on a farm, then he would likely know what a farmer's market would be like outside of Rapture, leading him to be more likely to be appalled by what he sees in the level. Upon first entering the level, the player encounters the corpse of somebody who had stolen from the Silverwing apiary, and a recording left by a Miss Tasha Denu can be found near the corpse. The recording refers to a character named Julie, and Denu makes it clear that she follows in Ryan's philosophy of being entitled to the sweat of her brow, by refusing to share the bees she created and everything about them, threatening to use violence if necessary, implying that this is the corpse of Julie and that she had died at the hands of Denu.
Julie, my dear, I am trying to run a business here. You want to spend time with my honeybees? Well, I'm gonna have to start charging you for the pleasure. If I come out one more time and find you lolling out there amongst my hives, I'm grabbing my shotgun. As to your question, yes, my days in beekeeping school are a blur, but I do seem to remember something about that enzyme you keep blabbing on about.
Following this path, the player enters the titular market, and witnesses a targeted Houdini Spicer doing battle with a rocket turret. By showing that Houdini Spicers are this early in the level, and considering that some of them were able to escape from Arcadia, it helps that there are more here if the player needs to get more chlorophyll samples from them. Once the player goes through this area, they can see how the market already seemed to be in a state of disarray, even before the Civil War began. The menus available have quotations around certain ingredients, implying that the people of Rapture had limited sources and had to make do with what was available. Another thing to note is that a lot of the meat and cheeses on display have rotted and are attracting flies, but some of the sausages remained untouched by time. When taking this into consideration along with the chips and snack cakes that Jack eats, this gives the impression that Rapture had been forced to use an excessive amount of preservatives along with the artificial ingredients. It may have been for the best that Jack can't eat the meat, as a crawl space behind the butcher's shop leads to a walk-in freezer with hanging corpses, heavily implying that the stakes in Rapture got so high that people had resorted to cannibalism. This is the only major point in the game which infers to cannibalism, but this does bring into question whether or not the general public of Rapture was even aware that they were being cannibals. Considering the quotations around ingredients on menus, it can be inferred that the general public knew that certain resources were limited and substitutions had to be made in order to survive, but it is left unclear if they knew how many drastic substitutions were made, and if they did know that they were cannibals, that makes the stakes even more horrifying. When the player exits the marketplace and heads for the doors of the Silverwing apiary and Worley winery, there is a glowing bottle of distilled water, showing that the player is on the right track for looking for the items needed to complete the Lazarus Vector. There is also a recording left nearby by a Mr. Pierre Gobi. He refers to Rapture as this dump, and he complains about how Worley Winery has started watering down their wine, another instance of a loss of supplies forcing the people of Rapture to make do with what they have.
In 10 years in this dump, I've come to accept a very low standard of life, but even at the bottom of this fish tank, a man must have standards. The pathetic trou de cul down at Morley Winery has started putting water to his terrible wine. Water! When I confronted him with this fact, he tells me, Pierre, this is not to worry. The water, she is distilled. It could be worse. I could take it right from the ocean.
Gobi also notes that they aren't using seawater, making it clear that the stakes haven't gotten to the very worst yet. But then again, Gobi probably wasn't anticipating the fall of Rapture. Another new gameplay tactic is introduced when the player enters the Silverwing apiary, as the bee enzymes that are desperately needed are kept in the artificial beehives being used for experimentation. On a minor note, this is where the game introduces the plasmid of insect swarm, appropriately enough, but it is recommended that one does not use it here, as one could run the risk of mixing their bees up with the hostile bees, who have begun building natural beehives through lack of supervision granted by the fall, allowing them to run wild like the splicers. On a grander scale, this part of the level includes an instance of racing against the clock, as one must turn on smoke and a machine called the Phanomatic to calm the bees in order to get the enzymes without being stung. But the smoke brings the attention of splicers. Either way, there's going to be some level of danger, forcing one to make a choice.
There's only one Big Daddy paired with Little Sister within the level, but these pairs have a strong impact on how the level is perceived, as many of the recordings left behind refer to them. A recurring emotion that comes up in these recordings is a feeling of regret. The people who created Little Sisters have done horrible things that they can't forgive themselves for doing. Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum was one of the most influential people involved in their creation, but she notes that she is feeling a sense of hatred when it comes to her creations. But the way she expresses it makes it sound more like she is feeling a sense of self-loathing for what she has done, rather than an actual disdain for the children.
One of the children came and sat in my lap. I push her off. I shout, "Get away from me!" I can see the Adam oozing out of the corner of her mouth, is thick and green. Her filthy hair hanging in her face, dirty clothes, and that dead glow in her eye. I feel hatred, like I never felt before, in my chest, bitter, burning fury. I can barely breathe. And suddenly I know, it is not this child I hate.
This sense of regret is further enhanced when Tenenbaum explains in another log how despite having been turned into brainwashed monsters, Little Sisters still give off a sense of humanity, as though they were something in the uncanny valley, disturbingly appearing and acting both human and inhuman at the same time.
The children must remain functional to be effective producers of Adam. I had hoped we placed them into vegetative states so they would be more pliable. I find being around them very uncomfortable. Even with those things implanted in their bellies, they are still children. They play and sing. Sometimes they look at me and they don't stop. Sometimes they smile.
Even Andrew Ryan himself makes a statement on the matter, but although he admits that he has done wrong through his involvement in their creation, he also makes it clear that there are others just as guilty, which could be interpreted as that he believes everyone who is involved is entitled to the metaphorical sweat on their brow, the sweat being their blame.
The children, with their very long needles, their tuneless songs, their ghastly errands, their ghoulish Frankenstein fathers, but we've all placed our hand on the great chain of endeavor. My hand is on it. Fontaine's is on it. We all pull it and are pulled by it. Yes, these children are an abomination, but it is not my hand alone on the chain that created them. No, their little fingers were right there next to mine.
Despite this claim, there's another recording in the level left by Ryan. This time he states that he's willing to manipulate and control splicers in order to survive, completely going against his valued ideal of unhindered free will.
Dr. Suchong, frankly, I'm shocked by your proposal. If we were to modify the structure of our commercial plasmid line as you propose, to have them make the user vulnerable to mental suggestion through pheromones, would we not be able to effectively control the actions of the citizens of Rapture? Free will is the cornerstone of this city. The thought of sacrificing it is abhorrent. However, we are indeed in a time of war. If Atlas and his bandits have their way, will they not turn us into slaves? And what will become of free will then? Desperate times call for desperate measures.
This makes it appear that Ryan only follows his philosophy when it benefits him, and is willing to abandon it otherwise. Furthermore, Ryan tries to stay optimistic that despite their horrid appearances and behaviors, the Little Sisters and Big Daddies help Rapture to function by harvesting the atom that everyone is addicted to.
On my walk today, I had my first encounter with a pair of them. He, a lumbering palooka in a foul-smelling diving suit, and she, an unwashed moppet in a filthy pink smock. Her pallor was off, green and morbid. And there was a rather unpleasant aspect to her demeanor, as if she were in an altogether different place than the rest of us. I understand the need for such creatures. I just wish they could make them more presentable.
This ends up painting Ryan as a man who knows that his ideology is flawed, and his attempt to make the best of what he has could simply mean that he is in denial of the problems that arise in Rapture. Considering that Ryan died proving his point, it's safe to say that Ryan is too stubborn to let things go, and that this recording further enhances that idea. The most important aspect of Little Sisters is how they are used to harvest atom, only for its addictive qualities to drive the citizens of Rapture mad. Dr. Tenenbaum makes notes of this in a recording found in the Silverwing Apiary, and that Fontaine sees a chance to profit off of atom, despite the dangers that may come of it.
Adam acts like a benign cancer, destroying native cells and replacing them with unstable stem versions. While this very instability is what gives it its amazing properties, it is also what causes the cosmetic and mental damage. You need more and more Adam just to keep back the tide. From a medical standpoint, this is catastrophic. From a business standpoint, well, Fontaine sees the possibilities.
It's fitting that this is found in the apiary, given that they were being controlled for profit as well, showing that multiple people followed Ryan's philosophy, including Fontaine. Fontaine wanted to profit off the substance because the people who used his plasmids were beginning to become addicted to the atom and becoming splicers.
The level of the farmer's market may at the first appear to be little more than side quest meant to make the game longer, but connection to other level helps to enhance the feeling of how important it was to Rapture as a whole. At a later level in this game, particularly the Hephaestus core, there's a recording left by a maintenance man named Pablo Navarro in which he describes how he found out the farmer's market was directly connected to the center of the Rapture.
I tracked the problem that was blocking the tubes here, and you'll never believe where I ended up. The damn farmer's market, clear on the other end of Rapture. I fixed it right up and installed some new gaskets. Whew, what a mess. Anyway, the code is 0512 if you ever need to get back in there to do maintenance.
In terms of game design, it makes sense to have a level connected to one another, giving the player a chance to quickly break trick if necessary. But when Pablo acknowledges how surprising it is, the connection gains a new sense of importance. Pablo is a maintenance man, but since even he doesn't know about the connection between two levels, implying that even after it was up and running, there was still secret in Rapture the general public didn't know about. Furthermore, Navarro knows that two sections are on opposite sides of the city, implying that there may be other secret connections all throughout the city. This helps giving one idea that there are secret methods of quickly traversing Rapture on foot without the need of the bathysphere. Despite appearing as nothing more than wayward side quests to gather components for Lazar Spectre, Farmer's Market offers not only an area where one can engage in new mechanics and a glance into the past of what Rapture once was prior to the war between Atlas and Lion. The level also gives a little more insight of psyche of those who were creating the Little Sisters, while a later level established through hidden connections that Hermes' market was more important than it initially appeared to be.